All right, guys, just got back from the beautiful state of Montana and the Shoot2Hunt course out there. This last week, I shot over 1,200 rounds, learned a ton. It's a phenomenal course. I'll just put that out there right now. But in this video, while it's fresh, I'm gonna do two things for you. One, I'll give you a full review of the course, give you an idea of what you're getting into. Like I said, overall, an awesome experience, but I do have a couple critiques, right? The second thing I'm gonna do in this video is give you a framework that you can use to analyze any shooting course. There's more and more options every year, and they're not all created equal, I can promise you that. These courses take a bunch of time and money, and figuring out the courses where you're gonna get the best bang for your buck is a big deal. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. What does it look like? So you're talking 6 days in the middle of nowhere and a shitload of shooting. Of course, there's some nuance, but that is the gist of it, right? And that is also the gist of why it was a damn good course, because we had a ton of shooting in there. So what does that shooting component look like? So you're looking at 1,000 rounds through a training rifle. Everybody in the course that I took was shooting a 223. They told me that in the past, people have tried to do it with a 6.5 Creedmoor. It's just too much recoil. And 1,000 rounds is 1,000 rounds, right? So you're shooting 200 or 300 of those a day. You've got to have almost zero recoil. And that's a big component of the course, because we're talking about essentially checklists, protocols, and then reps, right? That is a big deal. You learn something and then you do it over and over and over again. Now you are going to shoot your hunting rifle, and they left that up to you. You know, bring whatever rifle that you're going to hunt with, whatever rifle you're going to use on your dream hunt. Now I'll critique myself here a little bit, because I actually brought 2 rifles. I actually brought 3 rifles to use on that segment, and they were rifles that I don't actually hunt with. They were client rifles, guest rifles that I wanted to get more familiar with and really get a feel for if I liked them or not. That was a bad choice, right? It wasn't the right place to do that. And I think that personally, I would have got more out of it if I just used the hunting rifle setup that I've used for years, right? I've got a 7mm Remington Magnum, a Tikka that I've used a ton. It's been in other videos. I think I would have got more out of doing those reps with that specific rifle, right? But that's just me not following directions, all right? I think it's good to do all those reps with the rifle you're gonna shoot, because let's be honest, a gigantic bonus of this course was being able to get the reps in. You know, you're learning from guys that get to do this shit all the time, right? It's no big deal for them to go out and shoot 1,000 rounds in a week or whatever. Well, for you, for me, I'm a guy who works in the hunting business, and still shooting 1,000 rounds in a week, that is an opportunity that you don't get very often at all. The vast majority of you probably haven't shot that many rounds in your entire life, let alone in a single year. Take advantage of those reps. Take advantage of getting those tracks built in, right? Form, the head instructor that I'm sure some of you guys know, he uses that metaphor, right? Getting those ruts in, you know, with your technique, with your fundamentals, and then just digging them deeper and deeper. And that's what this whole structure of the course was about, right? All right, so when I first filmed this, I realized that I touched on the first day way too briefly. So as I put away my shit from the class here, I have to dwell on the first day a little bit. So first, I think that a lot of hunters don't realize, particularly as they get into hunting, that the shooting aspect of hunting, in terms of the overall skill set, it's tiny, right? It's a small chunk of the equation, okay? You can be a horrible shooter and you can have a lot of success as a hunter. You can be a phenomenal shooter and you can suck at hunting. However, you still have to know how shitty you are. And the reason is, if you go out and you constantly think that you can shoot 500, 600 yards when you're only capable at 250, you're going to, just by the math, continue to fuck up opportunities over and over. And because of that, you're just not going to harvest very many animals, or you're going to wound a lot of animals. You get discouraged. You're going to have this distorted view of what's going on. And in general, you're not going to blame it on yourself. You're going to blame it on the situation, animals, luck. And then the other thing, if you don't know how shitty you are and you're always thinking you can shoot that far, you're not developing those skill sets to get a little bit closer, right? You know, go from 450 to 250 yards, all right? Now, the reason I mention that is the first day of this course is magic in that regard. If I could take that first day and I could make every hunter on earth do it, almost everybody, and I went into it knowing this as a guide. Like, I've seen it with my clients and I've seen it with myself. I know generally how proficient people are in terms of real world situations. Where it's an awkward platform you're shooting from, there's rocks, there's angles there, you actually have an angled shot, you're dealing with wind, you're dealing with animals that are moving, you're dealing with pressure. I understand that dynamic, but I was still blown away at how shitty I performed on this first day in scenarios that were pretty damn realistic, right? So it was eye-opening for me, and I think it was eye-opening for everybody in the class, and it was across the spectrum of hunting experience, right? But just knowing that, hey, we all went into this class with a capability that was much lower than our expectations is super valuable. Obviously in the class we got better, and it was great to see that, but just knowing that as a hunter, that 95% of you guys that think you can shoot 600 yards under pressure on a awkward, platform in real hunting scenarios, the vast majority of you can't. You really should probably be shooting at 250, 300 yards. That's a really important thing to understand, and it's counterintuitive to people, and it's counterintuitive to our ego also, right? We don't want to admit right off the bat that we're giving up, a part of our skill set that we think that is just innate. It's not innate. Shooting beyond 250 yards, particularly in the mountains at game, shooting beyond that is not an innate skill that you're born with. You're going to get that eye opener. And I hope I'm not giving away some of the secret sauce here. I just want to emphasize that you're going to get a lot of value right there off the bat. And sure, a lot of you think, well, I can recreate that home. You really can't. These guys do a really good job of creating a realistic scenario where you can see the results, and that's key. So I'll leave it at that, but I had to touch on this a little bit more because I think it's such an important part of the course, and I think it's also a really important component of hunting that guys have got to understand. All right, guys, if you've watched any of my content over the years, you're going to be familiar with this hat. I wear it all the time. I wear it as just a standalone hat. I'm bald, so it keeps me warm across a bunch of different weather, but I also use it as a layer. I'll put it under other hats when it gets cold, when I'm out hunting, when I'm out guiding. One of my viewers reached out to me, and he's like, hey, I actually work for that company, and he told me the whole story. So this hat is actually made by a company that works with Mosaic. And what Mosaic does is they work with manufacturing facilities to employ people with learning disabilities. And from my perspective, that is a good cause, because what you're doing is you're giving these folks a job, and for a lot of them, that gives them independence and it gives them meaning in life. So I support this cause in a huge way, and I'm happy to say that they've made me some hats with my logo on them. You've got the goat on this side. I like to wear it this style you're seeing here where that's going to show, but my kids or people with smaller heads, they like to wear them folded up, and my other logos on there. Super useful hat, lots of application for the hunter. I use it probably more than any other piece of gear that I have, and this is a great way to support a great cause and to support this content. I'll put a link right down here and in the video description. Go check them out, guys. Back to the content. So you get that right off the bat, and then you go into a period of just working your fundamentals, breaking it all down. A lot of that is at 100 yards, right? Flat range. But the context is still all around hunting, right? So even though you're on a flat range, even though you're shooting only 100 yards, you're still focusing on building those positions out of the equipment you would have with you while you're hunting, as an example, right? But there's a whole bunch of other ways that the program is built around the idea that it is for hunters, and they do a good job of that. Now, when we got deep into the flat range 100-yard shooting, I will mention one thing, right? And there were several of these different things that I learned over this course that I had read about. It's not like they were some secret thing that popped out of my ass or popped out of one of the instructor's asses, and all of a sudden, oh, it was startling to me that this was the truth. But there were things that you have to do to become a believer. And one of those things was this 10-round, 30-round groups and getting your zero around that, right? When you actually shoot 10-round groups, and probably, I have no idea, I might have shot 50, 60, or more 10-round groups during this segment of the course, it'll become just blatantly obvious to you that you have been moving your turrets and slipping your turrets way too much over the years, right? And I've sighted in hundreds of rifles. I've had hundreds of clients come and, they get off of airplanes, they get off of long drives, we re-sight in their rifles, we gut check their rifles, We look at their zeros, and then we click a few times, right? And then we get it just right on that 3-round group we shot. Total bullshit. This will prove it to you, right? You start shooting those 10-round groups, and then you shoot that 30-round group. You see that cone of fire. It's like wires your brain, right? You're like, yeah, I knew this theoretically, but now I know it for real, right? So you get a lot of that in this course. That's just one example that is, I think, helpful to explain what you're going to experience in that like fundamental rep building part of the course. And there, it's not just the fundamentals, it's also the protocol they teach you. It's what I would call like the checklist they teach you, right? The next thing that you start to get into is you start to get into building up some rules of thumb that are super valuable. And again, the context is around hunting, right? So quick drop, right? And just a brief on that, the class is shot in mills. We go through some theory where Form, the instructor, gave us some quick ways to do drops for common cartridges, common velocities that we're getting out of our rifles, right? So what would that look like? How can we basically guess the mills, what we need to dial in at certain ranges? And then does that rule of thumb actually hold up in the hunting scenario to the extent that it doesn't matter that there might be like a little inaccuracy to it, right? So you learn several rules of thumbs like that on drop, on wind, on some other subjects, and then you get to go out and test them. Again, testing in reps is freaking giant in this course because yes, you can theoretically be told it, you can theoretically believe it, but you actually don't until you do the reps. So you go through that stuff and you see it and you're like, God damn, this shit works, right? And there's something about seeing it through the repetition that wires your brain, right? There are certain things I learned, that first 2/3 of the course that I don't think I'll ever forget. And every time I practice, I'm going to do those items because they made sense. I saw them functionally work, and then they're within the context of hunting. And that's what I'm focused on. I don't really give a shit about a lot of other things. I'm just focused on the shooting aspect of hunting and making that better, right? So that whole process worked really well. And then to finish up the structure of the course, you get into the last 2 or 3 days and you start to work on some things that are pretty cool, right? Again, I'm not going to give away their secret sauce. The way the course is taught, there's value in me not giving away the end game, right? Because the way they go about teaching you, there's some anticipation about what's next, and you're going to be asked to perform, right? It's not like, every nitty-gritty thing is like tested and written down and there's a camera up your ass or something like that. It's not like that, but for sure there's this feeling of, hey, like I'm anticipating what's next because I'm going to be tested with what I'm learning. So I think that's very valuable for a lot of different reasons. I think one, it keeps you interested, it keeps you learning, but I think it also somehow magically recreates this feeling of the hunt, right? You've got some stress, you've got some anxiety, you don't know what's next. You've got to get a good feel for that. And overall, I thought that was a cool part of the course. So I don't want to blow that up, right? But anyways, the last 2 or 3 days, you get back into real life scenarios, right? Which is cool. And then the other thing that they go over, which I thought was awesome, is some stuff that's maybe slightly less about shooting exactly and more about the hunting dynamic, hunting with pairs. An example of that would just be like the basic protocol of 2 hunters looking at an object out there 1,500 yards away. One hunter talks the other hunter into that object, right? I've actually done videos on this, so I do have a protocol, and it's kind of similar. I just kind of ended up there. So it's kind of similar to the Shoot2Hunt protocol that they teach you, but the way they do it is just better. It's cleaner, the communication's cleaner, so I thought that was really cool. I also thought that the spotter-shooter dynamic was really neat to learn. I thought that it had a lot of practical applications. You're gonna have to practice it with a partner, without a doubt, but there was a lot there. I've been taught spotter-shooter protocol from guys that are, for sure the roots are from the military, and again, just the little nuances that were adjusted for the hunting application made it way more powerful in this course, right? Like the context and things being developed specifically for hunting, that shit matters. And you're going to notice that throughout this course, all right? All right, so let's talk about the Shoot2Hunt instructors, all right? So Form, the notorious Form. A lot of you guys are going to know him from his activity on forums, the content he puts out, some of which is controversial, leads to a bunch of long discussions on a lot of these forums, particularly Rock Slide. So Form is the head instructor, and then on the week that I was there, there was Chris, and then Mike, and I apologize if I'm missing anyone else, but first thing I'll say about all these guys is they're super proficient at shooting. Everything we did, these guys did way better than me, way better than everybody else in the course, all right? And, you know, reflecting on what I've already said, given that, I mean, this stuff was applied to hunting, there's no doubt in my mind that taking shots on live animals, taking advantage of opportunities quickly and effectively, these guys are pretty damn good at it, right? So Form in particular is fucking incredible at a lot of this stuff, all right? That's my unbiased opinion just by watching him do this shit, okay? All right, so now on Form, because, you know, guys are gonna ask, and he's kind of a mysterious character, all right? So Form is the most likable asshole you're ever gonna meet. That's how I would describe Form. And after spending a week with him, I consider the guy a friend. He is a phenomenal instructor, but he's got a unique style. And I think that plays into what I talked about earlier, right? Keeps you on your toes, keeps you looking forward to the next thing. Is he gonna be everybody's favorite personality, favorite instructor? Probably not. You know, I like his style, and I feel like the vast majority of the people really enjoyed his style and they learned from it too. I think there's some people that might feel like Form kind of grinds them the wrong way, but they're still going to learn a shitload from the guy, right? So you got to figure out if you're a guy that's, you know, maybe a much different personality than him, and, you know, you don't like that style, in the end, like, who cares, right? Because you may still get an enormous amount of, you know, skill building by learning from a guy like that. What Form does well, and it's really structured into the course now, is if he's got a strong opinion about something, or it's something that people are going to view as a strong opinion, in the course, there's an opportunity to see it play out. And that's very powerful, and it's very powerful for his argument. And, you know, my, or I should say, like, the classes conversations with Form, and then also just my personal conversations with him, I like his philosophy, because basically his philosophy is, hey, I'm coming into this with a theory supported by evidence, and a lot of times a large empirical data set. Like, just take this course alone, right? Just me going to the course, I watched, you know, 10 to 15,000 rounds go down range, right? And I saw people working on their gear, I saw people learning with their gear, I saw people's challenges, I saw that. That's a pretty damn big data set just in itself, right? Guys, Bill Tong, okay? I have been obsessed with this stuff for 3 or 4 years. Ever since I got on a keto, carnivore, paleo-esque type of diet, I've had a hard time finding healthy snacks. Bill Tong is a great option, particularly the slabs that have this fat on the side. That's where your energy is if you're a fat burner like me. Super simple ingredients in this, guys. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients. Pair that to your gas station jerky, a great snack in the backcountry or just day to day. Biltong Depot is a huge supporter of my content. Go to their website, biltongdepot.com. Use my code CliffGray, CLIFFGRAY at checkout for 10% off and to support this content. Thanks, guys. All right, so the other one I've already got some messages on, it cracks me up, is, hey, Cliff, you're going to shoot your next elk with a 77 TMK. So, of course, this whole argument about the terminal ballistics of smaller cartridges and therefore smaller bullets, right? This is a very controversial topic on Rock Slide. Of course, Form is a very big part of that conversation. So, of course, we discussed it in the class. Now, the answer to your question is, I'm intrigued by the idea. Am I a sole believer that shooting elk with a 223 is the right choice? No, I'm not. But there's some good evidence there. But I think this is a good example of what I got out of the class and kind of the philosophy of the class, right? Now, on the small cartridge thing, I can tell you that I am sold and a believer on the fact that if folks rep things with small, low recoiling cartridges, they will become a better hunter, a better shooter. There's no doubt in my mind of that, particularly after taking the course. Of course, if you guys look at some of my old content, I was kind of leaning that way over the years anyways, based on anecdotal evidence I saw with hunters, right? Guys shooting big, large magnums generally were not good shooters and lack proficiency in, on the shooting skill set. But, anecdotal. Going to the course, seeing, 10, 12 guys shoot 1,000 rounds of 223 and then go back to their hunting rifles and improve greatly, I'm sold, right? I saw it. We iterated on it. I don't need to really get into it anymore. I saw the data set, right? So it's proven. Now, on the terminal ballistics and, killing elk, specifically this question of killing elk with the 77 grain TMK, we didn't do it in the class, right? We didn't go out and shoot a bunch of animals and everybody looked at them, and therefore I got that feedback loop and I'm sold, right? But I learned some stuff about it for sure. Just becoming more proficient with a smaller cartridge, that's a fact. And it's crazy because I got home from the course and then I did an interview / podcast with a guy who is on the other side of things, right? He promotes shooting larger cartridges and then learning how to deal with the recoil, right? Becoming a proficient shooter with high recoiling rifles, right? That's his take on it, is hey, you shouldn't do that. You should take that small cartridge shit and throw it in the garbage, and you should shoot big cartridges and you should just learn how to shoot them. And that's great. Maybe that idea has merit, but I haven't seen that play out. And as a matter of fact, reflecting on my data set as a guide, I've seen the inverse, all right? So I'm withholding judgment on this because I got to do both to see the results, before I have a solid take on it. And the reality is, in the terminal ballistics world, that's harder to do, right? It just is. All right, so one critique I have for the course, and it's minor, and I'm sure this is evolving, and it might even change week to week when you're there, but Form is a very good instructor in terms of the overall class, right? He's very good at getting the ideas out there, and then he's actually also really good at giving individual advice and critiquing you as you go. You got to have a little bit of a thick skin. The guy's going to give it to you how it is, right? He's not going to sugarcoat shit, but he's good at that. Now, in a class that's 12, 13 people, he's spread pretty thin, as you can imagine. The thing is those assistant instructors who were there, Chris, Mike, those guys are very proficient from what I saw, and they understand the system that's being taught really well. Anytime those guys gave me a personalized critique, some advice, it worked, right? And all I would have liked to see is those guys be more active, jump in there more, and give more individual instruction, right? Just because I felt like Form got spread a little bit thin over the entire group. Minor critique, but it's something, as you look at courses, you might consider, right? This was okay. It's not like I'm upset with it. I just think it's a room for improvement, and there was maybe some underutilized talent there, right? That could have helped, the individuals in the group. But it's a concept that you do want to consider when you're looking at courses, because if you're looking at courses that have 20 clients in them and one instructor and an assistant instructor, you got to figure that in a lot of ways you're going to be on your own throughout the course, right? You're going to have to do a lot of your own assessment of hey, what am I doing wrong, that sort of thing, just because those instructors are going to be spread thin. So just a thought, something that I think the course could be slightly improved with. All right, so now that you've got my overall view on this experience at Shoot2Hunt, and you can tell that I'm a pretty damn big proponent of it, right? I got a ton out of it. I didn't see anybody in that course not improve greatly while I was there for a week. And like I said, there were guys that were way better shooters than me, way more knowledgeable, and then there were guys at my level, and then maybe a few people that were a little bit lower than me on the experience and proficiency with shooting, right? So I was middle of the road, so I saw the whole spectrum. I improved greatly. I came away with it with a bunch of stuff to work on, and I think everybody else did in the class, right? How do we take my experience with this and apply it to analyzing any shooting course? So I've tried to break this down for you. So first, a key component is context, right? You've got to be going to shooting courses that take everything, take the theory, the protocol, the fundamentals, and contextualize it within the hunting use case, right? I haven't mentioned this yet, but one of my gripes about a lot of the other shooting material out there, shooting courses out there, courses that I've been to, courses I've had clients go to, is there's a lot of them that have their roots in the military, and that's fine, but you've got to take that and there's got to be some hunting experience built in there. If you're going to a shooting course from an instructor who just has a military background and now he's teaching you long-range shooting as it applies to hunting, it's a bad move. And I'm not trying to shit on military guys or anything like that. I'm just saying that if you go that route, and I got to mention this because damn near 80% of these courses are coming from, those roots. If you're going to go that route, you got to go and do it with an instructor, with a team of folks that understand hunting. Like, they got to be hunters, okay? If they tell you they've gone hunting once or twice, it's not going to work. You're not going to get what you need out of it. It has to be within the bounds of hunting. It's not the same thing. A lot of this shit does not transfer. The gear's different. The mindset's different. What you're doing is different. And what the goal is different, right? So you got to have the right context that the course is put into and structure around, and it's got to have that hunting component, all right? So the other thing is, and this may seem petty to you guys, but proficiency of the instructors and the team there, the assistant instructors, because the thing is it's just the case. In this course, and I don't think I've mentioned it yet, everything that we were shown, all the drills, Form did them and the assistant instructors did them. And the thing about it is they were damn good at it, right? And I could see these things being applied to hunting, and I could immediately see like what these guys are doing. They're good at it. They're way better than any of us, the students, and I could see exactly how they could apply it to the hunting situation, right? But seeing them do it, and the fact that they were very good at it was proof, right? And it keeps the momentum of the class. It keeps you intrigued. It keeps you wanting to learn. That just is what it is. And the thing about it is, like, the assistant instructors, they had been through the course multiple times and been around the protocol a whole lot. So that was almost even more telling, right? Like, maybe Form's just a fucking savant, right? Just a great shooter, and he could have learned shit totally incorrectly, and he's just good at it, right? There's people that are like that in all sorts of athletic endeavors and skill sets. They're just born fucking good, right? So I could look at it and I could say that, well, Form's just good at this because he's just, born savant at shooting, right? But when you see other guys that have been doing the protocol for years, learning from it, and they're damn good too, they're at like a next level, and you see that, it makes you want to believe, and it makes you want to learn in that environment. So I think that's important too as you look at different courses. Is this guy good at it? And combine that with the context one, right? Is he good at it, and is it applying to hunting in a practical sense? All right, the next one is reps. Okay, and this falls back into the cartridge thing a little bit, right? And I don't want to bust the balls of a bunch of the other shooting courses I've been to, because some of them have been very helpful to me in kind of a different way, but they haven't been as helpful. And part of that was we were only shooting maybe 100 rounds, maybe 80 rounds during 2 or 3 days, maybe 200 rounds during 4 or 5 days, maybe even 500 rounds during a week, right? That's not enough. You have got to get the repetition. This goes back to the idea of putting those ruts in the ground and then just digging into them, right? If any of you guys do other activities, take like martial arts, right? I know that there's a bunch of you guys out there that do jujitsu. I do too, so I'll use that analogy. And the thing about that is all about reps. To learn a move and learn like basic fundamentals, you get those ruts in there and you just keep doing it over and over and over again. If you do jujitsu or other martial arts, the whole thing is just rep. And for some reason, we think that same thing is not going to apply to shooting. It does. And the thing about it that's challenging with shooting is that you've got to kind of have it in the learning landscape, because you can't just go home and then start getting your reps and see if it works, because most people don't have easy access to go shoot 1,000 rounds. So to combine that in to the actual class scenario, it's almost essential, right? It's almost essential, that you're taught something, and then you're able to start repping it then, and rep it enough where you see that it's actually working, right? That's how you're gonna get that brain pathway, like, all right, this shit works, this is what I'm gonna do going forward until proven otherwise, right? So you gotta have the reps in the class, and again, that winds into this whole thing of shooting the smaller cartridges. You basically got to shoot the smaller cartridges. You're not going to shoot 1,000 rounds of 308, 1,000 rounds of 30-06, 1,000 rounds of 300 Win Mag. I don't give a shit how big your nuts are, right? It's just too painful to do that. All right, so the fifth thing on applying this to when you look at other shooting classes, you want to make sure that there's some sort of measuring going on, right? I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a big part of this course. But as you look at other courses, a good question to be asked is like, hey, is there a pretest? Is there a way we can assess, our improvement at the end? If they say no, I would be wary, because again, it's like you want to see the improvement, because that's how you're going to leave the class knowing that you got the value out of it you needed to improve your skill set and then continue improving that skill set. The last thing is protocols. So there's a lot of checklists and protocols that were used in the Shoot2Hunt course. I already talked about some of them. There's a lot of value in that. If everything is just theory and discussion of, things in a broad sense, but there's not like checklists applied, I think you're going to have a hard time getting much value out of one of these classes, right? And I can use the free diving analogy, right? In the spearfishing world, I've done probably like a dozen free diving classes. And for sure, the ones I've got the most value out of are the ones that taught me a strict protocol, right? In some ways, could a protocol that you're being taught be slightly suboptimal? Yeah, for sure. But having a checklist and having a way you do things every time has value in itself, right? So you want to make sure that whatever shooting course you're taking, or whatever course across, a lot of different things, has set things they teach you, right? When we get a shot opportunity, these are the exact next steps we take, right? This is exactly how we build a position. This is exactly how we get on the rifle. This is exactly how we call wind. This is exactly how we communicate. After the shot, after the animal's dead, this is exactly how we get off the rifle, right? That's what you want, because you can ingrain that in your brain. If a course doesn't go down that path, it's probably not going to provide you much value. All right, so gear. We got to talk about this, because a lot of people look at shooting classes and they look at them as just places for people to sell you a bunch of shit. Okay, so I have mixed feelings on this, because I see it both ways, but I've also done enough of these things to realize that if the gear is overt, like the whole shooting system and the whole shooting course is about the gear, it's clear, right? Like everybody's going to get it. The system's built around that. It's overt that they're selling you stuff. But on the other side of things, if the class isn't overt about it, they're not pushing their gear, what you find is that there's one of two scenarios. One scenario, it's kind of a clusterfuck, because the class becomes a class about messing with gear and, getting things to kind of fit within the system. Or it may not be overt, but everybody's using the same gear anyways, right? And I would put Shoot2Hunt in that, right? They don't say that you have to have a Tikka. They don't say that you have to bring a 223. They don't say that you have to bring a certain type of hunting rifle. But once you get there, you realize that everybody's kind of complying with the system. And then the folks that don't tend to have trouble. Skill set, the learning component, is built around a certain system that has worked over trial and error, all right? And so what I would say in general is don't fight it, right? If you're gonna go take a shooting class and they have some tools that they use, some gear that they use, either buy it or rent it, right? You can always decide after if it's for you or not. You can adjust your system. But going into one of these classes with the idea that I'm gonna take my gear, take that square peg and try to ram it into a round hole, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's going to deteriorate the value you get out of the course. Now, if you want to hear my opinion on, the rock stock, the shooting bags they use, essentially everything that they've done is based on their data set. Am I wholeheartedly in love with all of it? No, because a lot of it I still have to use for a couple seasons. I haven't used, the only time I've used the rock stock, and for people who aren't familiar, it's the stock that have, a very blatant cosmetic feature is that toe line is basically flat, parallel to the bore of the rifle, right? That it's got a bunch of other thought out features too. And the reality is that you'll see some of those exact same design features like in the Magnus Gunworks stock. There's some similarities there you'll see, but it takes kind of some of those ideas and is a little more extreme. That's why a lot of people recognize it, because it's cosmetically pretty freaking obvious. But I have to withhold judgment on that, because in the course, I shot gear that the course was developed around, and I didn't have problems, right? So that's a good data point, but now I've got to take that and use it in the field and form my own opinion about it, right? And the thing is like, you got to get like relative comparison, right? Like, okay, the rock stock, is it recoiling, perfectly straight back and helping me, get my sight picture back more quickly? Well, I don't know, because I got to sit next to another rifle and shoot both of them and see, right? To actually have like a real piece of advice. But in the course context, Hunt to Shoot or another course, just get their system. Don't fight it, right? just don't fight it, because if you do, it's gonna deteriorate your experience, right? And then afterwards, you can figure out if, hey, can I take this system, this skill set component of it, and apply it across, the tools I have, or do I need to make adjustments? That's my thought on it. It's not going to be the most popular, but it is what it is. Okay, now that brings us to price considerations. The Shoot2Hunt course was pretty expensive, and when I talked to the group, that was like a general, kind of, when you get into the pros and cons, it's like, well, was it too expensive? Was it, was it just right? Did I get the value out of it? It's kind of a personal judgment to some extent. It's expensive for these guys to do these courses, and part of that is like the venue, their cost structure. It's kind of all over the place. And as you look at different shooting courses, you'll see that some of them, mostly because of the, where they're doing it, because you got to have a unique place, right? You got to have some space. You got to be not annoying neighbors. You've got to have some angles. You've got to be able to recreate the real hunting, the real hunting scenarios. So you got to have a unique place. You got to have housing for people. Like, it's not easy to do that. Some shooting courses, that cost is really low. Some shooting places, it's probably pretty high. You've got how many instructors you have. You got all the other components of the cost structure, and that's going to vary wildly, right? It's a lot like, hunting and outfitting. It's going to be all over the place, and in the end, that's going to be reflected in the price. Now, on the Hunt to Shoot course specifically, really, you're looking at somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 all in, once you pay for the ammo, pay for the course, pay for the logistics, right? That's what you're looking at. So it's not cheap, but part of that you got to understand is that there's a lot of reps. And so a chunk of that, just the incremental reps that you're getting are costing you via ammo. So you've got another $500-600 just because of that, right? Now, it's a personal thing. Is it worth $5,000 to you? I don't know. What I'll say on this is that people spend $5,000 on way dumber shit, particularly on the gear front, right? If somebody came to me and they're just wanting to be more proficient as a hunter, I would put that $5,000 spent on a shooting course like this up there pretty high, right? Would it be above just like baseline gear? Of course not. Like, you got to have that to go hunting. Now, as you get down the list, you get to, either going on another hunt or going to a Shoot2Hunt like course, right? At that kind of price tag, that $5,000. There's some similarities there. You can probably do some decent hunts for that, that price range. I think the answer to that is a personal question for you, right? Like I said in the beginning of this video, you can be a very capable hunter as long as you understand your capabilities, even if you're not a very good shooter, right? So that's a question of where you want to improve yourself, right? Do you just want to go out there and get more and more experience in the field, become a better hunter, and you're focused on that part of the skill set? Go out there and do more hunts. But if you've been playing around with your shooting and you feel the need to improve it, I cannot imagine a better way to do it, right? Buying new guns, buying new gear around shooting, going to a bunch of subpar, $1,200 courses, going to 5 of those or 10 of those, is not going to get you the value of just going to a good course. So not a real clear answer for you, but hopefully a transparent answer for you. I understand that it's a lot of money and there's different trade-offs you can do, but it just depends on where you're at. If you want to improve as a shooter in the hunting context, go do it. It's like low-hanging fruit. If you just want to, kill a couple more animals, it might make better sense for you depending on where you're at and the experience you have right now. Go on some more hunts, right? Get that down. Get where you feel like, okay, hey, I've got, a lot of these other parts of my hunting skill set down and dialed. Now I'm ready to dial in that shooting. All right, guys, I hope you found this useful. There's a lot there. I hope it helps you. If you're considering the Shoot2Hunt course, you can always reach out to me with questions directly about it. I will be transparent with you about my experience there. I hope it helps you if you're looking at other courses that are closer to you, are cheaper, are just easier for you to go to. I totally get it. I hope this helps you and this discussion helps you kind of understand what you should be looking at, what the important metrics in there that you should consider. The fall hunting seasons are just around the corner. All you backpack guys, I put this video out right here, how I do my food for backpack hunts. Go through the nitty gritty, go check it out. I think you'll get some value from it. Thanks guys, I'll catch you later.